Hi, Trim Healthy Mamas. My name is Tina. I'm one of the admins over on the Allergen Free group. I have a blog, which hopefully you're finding this through, called Anointed with Oil. I am an egg-free, almond-free, peanut-free. I also don't do turkey, which is kind of one of the side allergens that I have. But those are kind of my main ones that I try to avoid. And I found that on THM, egg-free seems to be one of the hardest, and I think under that comes dairy-free is also really hard. And I am actually limited dairy. I do have some dairy. Through healing on THM, I've been able to introduce some cheeses and things, which has been amazing. But my focus of this video is egg-free baking. It seems like most of the recipes that come with THM in the book have lots of eggs, and a direct sub sometimes just doesn't always work the way we want it to. The nut flours tend to be heavy and create more of a dense, sometimes almost a goopy end result. And so I worked hard by just playing with different ingredients that are THM compatible to try to create a lighter, fluffier texture, and I wanted to share some of those things with you. So first I wanted to go through the different options that we have for substituting eggs in most baking. And I don't have a hard and fast rule of when to use what, but I'll kind of give you a guideline. So some of the S versions of things that you can use for subbing an egg is chia seeds, and I use these frequently. You can also use flax seed, which I mill or buy it milled into a fine consistency. And then you use these by gelling them and substituting them in your recipe. And those work great for S foods. For E foods, you can substitute with things like applesauce. I buy them in these little containers because I don't go through a big one fast enough to make it worth my while. But applesauce is a great option. Bananas, sweet potatoes, things like that work good. But generally I try to keep those in E's unless you're using like one of these little applesauces for a big recipe that serves like 12 or so, something like that. Then the little bit of carbs in there is okay. Your fuel pull option, and one of my new favorites, is the gelatin. I have here beef gelatin. I buy mine through Azure Standard, and it works great because you can use it in any setting. You can make a fuel pull, an S, or an E item, and so that's one of my big favorites. The general ratio for most of these products is 1 tablespoon to 3 tablespoons water. So 1 tablespoon of your product to 3 tablespoons water. Gelatin, I generally cut back a little bit to 1.5 to 2 teaspoons of gelatin to 3 tablespoons water, and I mix it and let it sit for gelatin in cold water. That's the only one that's unique, is it needs to be bloomed in cold, not hot. Now, for your chia seeds and your flax meal, you want it to be, you can do it in cold, it just takes longer. I like to do mine in hot, especially chia seeds, which I'm going to actually go through the process of making my muffin in a mug that I have on my website. I found this nifty little measuring cup at a local store, and I bought it because it fits perfectly. It has 4 tablespoons in it, so 1 tablespoon of my dry good, in this case it's chia, and I'm going to add 3 tablespoons of hot water, which I already have back here, and we're going to let that set for a minute while I go through some of the other items that I wanted to talk about for egg-free baking. So in addition to subbing out your egg, oh, and one thing, if your recipe calls for more than 2 eggs, I generally don't try them. I look around for another recipe. I've had a hard time getting things to come out light and fluffy if it calls for a lot of eggs. It just doesn't do it well. So some of my tricks that I played with and I found work really well is I lighten up the recipe. A lot of S recipes especially call for meal, the almond meal, or I use cashew meal because I can't do almonds, but whatever nut flour you use is usually a little heavier. It's still got oils in it, and so that kind of makes your end product really dense and sometimes too moist to be a fluffy baked product. So I found, and I'm out of, that oat fiber, I get the THM oat fiber, which I don't have to show you. Psyllium husk is a great option, and then this is my protein powder I use. It's the brown rice vanilla. These have a lighter texture to them than the almond and the cashew flours, and they tend to lighten up the end product a great deal. And so these have been an amazing way to sub in a product and take out some of the others. So generally speaking, in my muffin in a mug recipe, I don't actually have any nut flour anymore in it. I found it worked better for me if I just used an alternative product. But if I were to leave some of the nut flour in it, I would definitely sub out at least a fourth of what's called for in it with one of these lighter products. Another good option too is if you're going to make a chocolate item, the cocoa powder is also a light, fluffier consistency. And so that will often help lighten up a product. So I thought I would go through the process of actually making up my muffin in a mug. I hope you can see this, but it's starting to gel. I was kind of hoping to show you, because if you use hot water, it gels faster. Cold water, it takes longer. And I'm getting a good gel going here. Can you kind of see that consistency? You want it to be kind of resembling an egg. So in my muffin in a mug recipe, I pour in my hot chia seeds over my oil. I already had my tablespoon of oil in this cup. And then I'm going to flip to my recipe and make sure I don't miss a step. And then I put in 1 tablespoon of protein powder. That was just a little shy. 3 tablespoons of flax meal. And this little ramekin I found is just a fantastic little piece for making up my little muffins. And then I have my THM Sweet Blend. I love this stuff. And I just use a teaspoon of this. I'd use 2 teaspoons of any other sweetener that you're choosing to use. I just kind of eyeball my cinnamon. I like things really cinnamony, so I add a lot. And salt. Calls for 1/4 to 1/2 teaspoon. Again, I kind of pinch and just put it in. It's more my style. And the last item here is my baking powder. Calls for 3/4 of a teaspoon. That looks about right. So put all these aside. And then this is the longest part of it, besides the actual cooking in the oven, is mixing these dried ingredients into that chia egg. Okay, we're getting really close. I thought I'd show you this because I know some folks have had a little trouble with it, and I wanted it to be something you could see. Gluten-free baking, and especially egg-free baking, doesn't come out like a muffin batter would that you can pour or kind of scoop. Mine is actually a thicker consistency like that. It's not dry, it's still moist. And then I bake mine for a minute 20, minute 30. And I'll pop that in and let that go. Okay, our muffin is done. Well, at least I'll check it. If it looks a little doughy in the middle, I always pop it back in. No, this actually looks pretty good. I think we have a done muffin. Yes, we do. So let me hold it up. It's hot. There's my completed muffin. It's all done. It has a little bit of spring even. And if I've never tried to pull it out while it's really hot. It might come out. Yeah, it probably would. But if you let this cool, you could actually put this in a Ziploc baggie and take it with you to go and actually have a regular muffin. Now my muffin doesn't come out as big as the muffins that you traditionally make on THM on the base recipe that's in the book. They are smaller, they are still a little bit more dense, but this definitely has some leavening to it, and it's lighter and it's fluffier than if you just do a simple swap out with one of the egg substitutes, either the flax or the chia seed. A couple other things I wanted to address too was if you're looking to get things a little more leaven, and you could even try this in this recipe, is you could add in a little bit of baking soda and a little bit of vinegar of choice. Those two cause a chemical reaction that helps things to kind of rise up. And so sometimes if I'm really struggling with a recipe, I'll just plop a little of this in and add it in and bake away. And usually I get a pretty good result with that. The last thing I wanted to address though, before I let you guys go, is the gelatin egg. One of my hardest things I was finding with cookies, especially, or baked goods that I wanted to be able to take out and hold up and eat like a cookie. I wanted to find a way to make it so they weren't so crumbly. All my foods were coming out really good tasting. They tasted wonderful, but they weren't the same that I could pack them to go. And so the recipes that I have on my website, like the chocolate chip bar cookie, that was my first real experiment with gelatin egg, because the bar was coming out really good, but it was not something you could eat with just picking up and eating like a cookie. You could only use a fork or a spoon to eat it because it crumbled away so easily. And I found that the gelatin egg makes such a great substitute for that. What it does is when the item is cooled, you can't do it while it's warm, the item has to cool completely, is it does create that structure that you're kind of looking for from an egg. And so it holds the product together. So I've had so much success with the gelatin egg. And again, I use about 1 to 2 teaspoons per 3 tablespoons water, and I mix it in cold water and I let it sit, and it'll bloom and become thick and kind of egg-like. If it becomes too thick, you need to thin it out so it's at a stirrable kind of egg-like consistency. But I've had really, really good success. So if you have an item that you love that you've been subbing in one of those other things for, I highly recommend you try the gelatin egg and see if you also have success with getting an item you can actually pick up and eat, or cut serving pieces of and serve instead of just scooping and eating it that way. So that's been a huge blessing for me, is finding the gelatin egg. I sure hope that this video has been a blessing to you and that you find it helpful. I thought about writing all this out, but I felt like I could just kind of explain the process I've gone through to finding good substitutes for egg-free baking on THM and impart them to you, so hopefully you can have success. And if you do use some of these subs that you haven't tried before and you do have success, I'd love to know. So if you would post a link to your successful story or a picture of your great item that you made, or just, I want to cheer you on if you found something great you can have on THM that's egg-free, because it's a hard allergen to overcome, but together we're going to do it. So it was nice to see you all, and who knows, maybe I'll do another video again someday. Bye.